So my hot take is product managers should stop prioritization through value divided by effort. If you just take a disparate list of potential solutions and try and prioritize those, then you have no vision, you have no strategy. You basically are on a path to the feature factory. Even when you do all of that good stuff and you have a vision and a strategy and you're prioritizing opportunities, I think that the default tends to be what's the best value, divided by effort.
Hello and welcome to another episode of One Night in Product Hot Takes Edition, where I speak to one person about one thing, get straight to the point and find out what's on their mind. Now, if you've got something on your mind, why not head over to onenightinproduct.com/hot, where you can find a time, book a slot, come and talk to me, and we'll share your opinions with the world. In any case, do remember to pop over to onenightinproduct.com, where you can find all my old episodes, find the podcast on your favourite podcast app, subscribe to the podcast on YouTube, and make sure you never miss another episode again. Anyway, enough of me. Let's get straight to Mark Gray's hot take. All right, so I see in front of me a slightly lit room with a feature wall at the back, a little bookcase which is almost as impressive as mine, a nice big plant, and a person. And the person in front of me, I want to introduce himself and also to tell me where he's from and what he does for a living, and more importantly, what's his hot take. And let's get out of the third person at some point as well.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Jason. So my name's Mark. I'm in Southampton in the UK. I'm a product manager. I've been doing product for coming up to 12 years now, across a few different roles. Product started off in a very delivery-focused product owner type role, the sort of thing that Marty Kagan has made some comments about recently, except I wasn't vastly overpaid. And then, became, I suppose, more strategic, started to straddle that product manager, product leader type role. And that's where I'm at today. I've worked in not particularly glamorous or sexy companies or industries, nothing in the Valley, everything either in the UK or in Europe. But yeah, been doing that bit of B2B, bit of B2C, and been at it for a while now and still enjoying it.
And what's your hot take?
So my hot take is, and I guess a couple of caveats, like it's the sort of idea that's sort of crystallizing a bit, and people will probably say that that's not right and you haven't considered these things, and that's great.
Well, that's what the hot take's all about though, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's about creating debate, I suppose, and people will hopefully have some interesting things to say on why I'm right or wrong on this. And it is that product managers should stop defaulting to prioritization through value divided by effort. Now, you're probably thinking, not such a hot take. People have been saying this for a long time, that if you just take a disparate list of potential solutions and try and prioritize those, then you have no vision, you have no strategy, and you're not going to, you basically are on a path to the feature factory. And I believe all that stuff, and that's not really what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that even when you do all of that good stuff and you have a vision and a strategy and you're prioritizing opportunities and you bring cross-functional and diverse teams together to come up with good solutions, I still feel like the default then is to go, because there's always a question of, right, what do we do first? And I think that the default tends to be, well, what's the best value, divided by effort. And the reason that I think people should not be doing that are probably threefold. So the first one, and this maybe is obvious to a lot of people, is that we don't know either of those two things, right? We so often see that things we think are high value are not high value, and we end up doing things that we maybe weren't that confident in, and we really see the needle move. That has happened so many times over the years to so many different people. And even on the effort side, I think, we're not very good at that even. There's a bit more certainty there, but we so often find that these things that we think are quick wins actually tend to be more work than we thought. Every so often, it's the other way around. But
can't you then just add in other things? Like, for example, there's things like rice and ice and stuff like that, where you just sit there and you say, well, okay, yeah, we don't know all of these things, but we're confident or we're unconfident in these things. So let's bring that into the mix. And maybe there's reach and stuff that we can bring in as well, because, we can calculate that. And even if we're not 100% confident, we can multiply it by how many people it's going to touch. Like, does that resonate with you at all? Or do you think that's got the same problems as just value and effort?
we can do that. Essentially, those things are, it's just a more complicated way of getting to the same thing, right? Yeah,
Do you think it all works out the same then? Like, do you think if you ran those exercises, you'd get exactly the same order?
Well, maybe not exactly the same, but more or less the same. Like, it'd be very similar. It's a slightly more nuanced thing. But you're still calculating value in a slightly cleverer way, and maybe you're calculating effort in a slightly cleverer way. But at the end, it all sort of rolls up to that.
Cancels out, probably.
Yeah, and I think people will say that that's not true. I know there are a lot of people that are real Rice proponents, as wrath I may feel after that, and that's fine. I find that one of the other reasons is that the big stuff never wins. When you do these calculations, you always find that anything that's of any reasonable side is always at best in the middle of the list. And because I've done this before, because it's the received wisdom, right? Is that this is what you do. And I look at these lists of things, and I think that thing feels so valuable. We've got so much evidence to support it, but yet I can't justify doing it because it's not at the top of the list. So these things, you tend to, in my experience, end up doing lots of small things and never really finding the time to do these things. And I think it can really stifle innovation and sort of long-term sustainable customer value, these things, because really anything worthwhile is going to take a bit of effort to build. And I think we tend to lose out on not doing those things.
So how do we then, if we look at that and play that through, you sit there and you say, fine, we've got this huge, great big thing over here. We've got this other huge, great big thing over here. Both are really valuable, or probably really valuable, but at the same time, we don't 100% know yet. And, that's something that we need to talk about. But at the same time, there's this thing that everyone thinks is going to be really valuable. And it's really easy, like the dreaded quick win, right? So in that sort of situation, how can you make a case that you shouldn't work on a quick win that is like the obvious thing, the low-hanging fruit that everyone wants to chop off the tree? How can we persuade or make the case that don't work on that little thing that's really obvious, but actually let's try and take a punt on this bigger thing that's really hard, and obviously the value is even more uncertain, but it feels like it should be valuable?
So I'm not arguing against doing quick wins. I'm not saying that we should. In a lot of situations, it will make sense to start there. I think a lot of the time when you're kind of iterating towards an outcome that you want to achieve, at the starting with quick wins is great, because I think you have to build momentum, right? Because really you learn so much as you go from what worked and what didn't. I guess my argument is not that value and effort aren't important. It's just that they are factors to consider amongst many other factors. And what I have found over the years is that the path to like where to start tends to, or what to build next, tends to be emergent from conversations. When you get smart people, cross-functional people together, and we say, right, this is what we want to achieve, you tend to find that these conversations emerge and it becomes clear what you need to do. And it's not necessarily the most valuable thing or the least effort thing. So I remember a conversation recently with a tech lead, and I remember he said, look, this thing on the list here, this feature that we think is going to be good, that's probably not top of your list. But if we do that, that's going to make doing all of these other things on the list so much easier to do afterwards. And then it just became sort of so obvious that was the thing to do. Whereas if you're, I think, constrained by this oversimplified approach of, well, estimate effort, estimate value, then we would have never have done that thing first.
But one problem that you have with obvious things, like obvious is another trigger word, right? Like you look at it and you go, well, some things are obvious because someone just thinks that they're obvious. They're not actually obvious at all. They just assume there's assumptions in there that maybe are unproven. They're supremely confident on their own, and therefore they just sit there and you say, well, this is absolutely the thing to do. It's obvious. Again, low-hanging fruit or quick win, and all of these words that trigger and give the twitches to any product manager out there. So I'm not going to disagree with your sort of central hypothesis. I do think it's absolutely fair not to just do these sort of simplified things. At best, you could use them as like a conversation starter, I guess. But as part of that conversation, what are you then personally recommending that you actually, like what kinds of conversations you're having, with whom, and what is the output of that conversation?
Well, I think the conversation needs to be between, this feels like a really textbook, boring answer, but I think the conversation needs to be between product design and tech. And I think you need to look at what the outcome is that you want to achieve. And the sort of the business goals, I think it varies so much, right? Sometimes you'll be going after a really ambitious goal, right? You might be going after, trying to move retention by 2%, which sounds so ambitious, but anyone that's tried to move metrics like that by that much know just how hard that is to do. And so then you need to say, well, doing these little things isn't going to get us there. We need to gamble on it, or not gamble. So I'm going back to my early career roots there in the gambling industry. We need to make some big bets, and some of them are not going to pay off.
But making a big bet is a gamble, just to clarify.
It is, yeah.
So you're still getting sucked back into your former life, but I'm not saying it is wrong, but we do have to clarify that gambling and making big bets are basically the same thing.
That's true. That's a fair point. So I'm a big proponent of being deliberate on that front, of looking at the goal and saying, right, how are we going to get there? Is this a case of, lots of small improvements are going to move the needle a little bit, and that's fine because that's what we're after? Or do we need to gamble a bit and do some things which, could pay off or could flop massively?
Absolutely. But let's just then play a hypothetical scenario, the best kind of scenario. We don't have any consequences off the back of this, but, let's imagine that you walk into a new company. You've got a new job at some point in the future. You walk into that new company. You've been working with people that maybe aren't doing the things that you just said, or maybe just complete feature factory or whatever it is that you're walking into. You've got a backlog of 150 different items in there, all of which needs to be sort of sorted through and try and work out what to do with. You kind of need to start to think about what it is you're actually going to start working on and how you're going to take the product that you've inherited forwards. Now, some people might just sit there and say, right, we've got this backlog, let's value and effort estimate it and kind of just sort it all out. And that gives us a first sort of pass, first stab. Is that what you would do? Or if not, then what would you do walking into that situation with that size of backlog?
Tough. It sounds like a fun challenge.
You're probably going to stay there for a few months and leave, but whilst you're there.
But I would definitely give it a good shot. I think what I would, I would be very wary of trying to change too much too quickly. I've seen that happen a lot of people coming in about, you guys are doing it wrong. Right? There's nothing worse than being told you're doing it wrong, except being told that you're doing it wrong by someone you don't know, someone that's just come into the business. That's sort of a surefire way for you to fail, I think. So I think one of the first things was obviously sort of assimilate myself into the business and try and build trust amongst the people whose minds I need to change about that. I think I would probably go down the. It's an interesting question. Would I? Well, are we talking about a situation where there is literally just a huge backlog of things, and it's just, come on, which of these should we do?
Yeah, I guess the ultimate, if we take it out of the hypothetical, or it's still technically a hypothetical, I guess, but how do you get started getting away from that thing that you've described?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
That's really where we're going with it.
Yeah. So I think if I'm being really honest, there is a small chance that I would take one of these ideas that I think is do some very sort of first order approximation of effort and value. And this is being incredibly honest here because it's everything that I'm arguing against. But I think it's important that to show progress, right, and be like, all right, we're going to get started on that thing. It seems a reasonable idea. Most of these things are probably not terrible ideas, right? If they've made it onto the list, so it's probably not a terrible thing. In parallel with that, I guess what I would look to do is to build a strategy, a vision, and a strategy for the product based on data. Talk to a load of customers, really explore the data, and create a first sort of stab of, right, this is the vision, this is the strategy. Feed it up. Is it right? Is it not? Which bits did I get wrong? And try to get to a point where we can say, right, maybe we could focus more around this goal. Do we agree this is the goal? which of these 150 ideas are targeting that goal. We can really pare the list down and then try to set up some sessions with some cross-functional people to actually, do that. Probably I'm a big fan of the opportunity solution tree to try to ideate these solutions and then sort of push it in that direction.
Well, there you go. Well, I'm sold. But if other people aren't sold, or if they are sold and they want to come and congratulate you for, saying all the things that they already thought, where can they come and find you after this if they want to, chat more or just connect with you?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm on LinkedIn. My LinkedIn is Mark Faraday Gray. There may be some hyphens in the middle there. My Twitter is the same. I'm not particularly active on Twitter, but if you message me, I will absolutely reply.
Absolutely. Well, we all kind of have Twitter as a guilty pleasure these days, right? Or many of us do, but, at the same time, I'm sure they can come and find you on LinkedIn anyway. Well, I'll make sure to link that one into the show notes. But as for now, Mark, thanks very much for your hot take.
Jason, thank you.